We welcome the creator and the cast of Outcast. Robert, let me start with you. A question I've actually always wanted to ask you.
Oh, please do.
What do your titles come from? Because they're so evocative. Invincible, Outcast, The Walking Dead. How do they come to you?
Man, I don't know. Outcast in particular was a really difficult one because it went through a bunch of different names, and they were all terrible. Luckily, I don't remember most of them, but
You remember some of them? I'm just curious.
like one of them at one point was actually Inside Out, which ended up being a Pixar movie. But I was like, you got demons inside you, and you want to get them out of you, right? Like, that's a good title, right? Inside Out? No? And everyone, no, definitely not. So yeah, and then I think I started with Cast Out. I was like, what about Cast Out? And then it was actually David Alpert, who's an executive producer on the show, who was like, what's better than Cast Out is Outcast. And I was like, oh yeah, no. That's I would have gotten there on my own, I swear. But yeah, so that happens. But I don't know, on all the other stuff. I mean, my titles, I just it needs to be simple. It needs to be memorable. It needs to be like very direct. Like I try to get it to one word if I can. Walking Dead didn't work out. I think it's really held that project back. But yeah, I don't know. Just try to make it as simple as possible.
Well, let me start with the cast. I'll start with you, Reg. What do you think of your character when you saw your first script?
I was thoroughly pleased. Robert had called me before, we started it. He said, "Okay, he's only in one scene in the comic book, so don't go by the comic book. I'm going to write something," and he came through in a big way. So I've been really thrilled.
Wrenn?
I was really drawn to Megan's humor in the initial script that I read, and the dynamic that she has with the character Kyle. That was what I kind of really latched onto immediately.
But she loses that pretty fast, though, doesn't she?
I think it still comes to the surface. I mean, she has some pretty terrible stuff happen to her, but yeah, I still feel like that's there. It's been interesting to see how it's popped up through the second part of the first season and into the second season. I would say there's maybe a little less of it, but yeah, she's still got it.
Well, I play Sydney, who I think weren't you considering that as a title at one point, Sydney?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Your character is the main character.
Well, thank you. No, he's a man of mystery. Obviously, we don't know exactly who or what he is. We think we know, and then we find out we're wrong.
Or maybe we don't.
Or maybe we don't. But it's fun. It's a very fun character to play. I enjoy being evil.
Did you like him when you first saw him on the page? Because he goes through so many kind of iterations
Yes.
in that last episode even.
Right. Did I like him when I read it on the page? Yeah. Well, I did. I came into. I actually auditioned for it, and it said that he wore a hat, and I thought, good enough for me. I like any character that wears a hat.
You'd be surprised the actors you can get just by giving a character a hat.
It's true.
Well, Patrick, you don't wear a hat, but what did you think of the script when you
I've
first saw
always
it?
wanted a hat.
It's not too late. I think you know somebody.
No hat for you.
I originally got the synopsis and everything, and what really drew me in was the depth of character that were in the two scenes they gave me, and they were two very different scenes. They were fake scenes.
What
right?
were? Don't look at me. I don't remember. No, they weren't fake scenes. One was this. Well,
Oh yeah, one.
I know
no,
you
no.
got the scene with you and Phil in the prison later. For you to
Yes.
do.
But that
That's
had
with Phil.
changed.
Didn't you have
No,
a
it did
kitchen
change,
one with
but,
Megan?
Yeah, ours was the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my original one was like.
Oh, and there was a scene with you and Allison.
Yeah.
That was written just for the
Yeah.
for the auditions. Yeah.
But they were two. One scene was very light, but had this sort of underlying tragedy that had happened to Kyle. But it was about his future wife at that point, sort of drawing the brightness out of him and that sort of thing, lifting him up. And then the other scene was him recounting things that had happened to him in his childhood. I just thought they were two like very contrasting themes throughout those two scenes. And I thought it was very interesting. And I thought, well, if they're all written like this,
And were they?
well,
Give them a chance this earlier. Give them another season. It could all work out for you.
Yeah, this show's really going to get good, I swear.
that's what we
I
need.
swear.
More practice.
Yes. More comedy. It's all coming. Ren, you're going to be hilarious in the second season. I just sort of think about, because I've been talking about this with you before, that very first scene in the pilot with Joshua, which is just terrifying. How did you write the pilot?
Slowly? No, I mean, I don't know. You always want to start something off with a bang. I mean, I feel like in this crowded entertainment environment, you really want to make sure that people are kind of getting a sense of what they're getting into, and also hopefully hooked from the very first minute. And I feel like a small child, smashing their face. Smashing a roach on the wall with their face and then eating it and then going downstairs and chewing their finger up. It's going to be somewhat memorable.
That was it for. Oh, okay.
So,
Right, okay.
so yeah. I mean, that would be, that would be fun. So yeah. I mean, I just, trying to push the envelope a little bit. Just to come up with something kind of scary that also, kind of encapsulates, the kind of story that we're telling. It's, very familiar. It's a very normal setting, but very unfamiliar, unreal, strange things happening. And there's a lot about that scene where you see the behavior of Joshua and you see, how he moves and how alien the environment around him is, that starts to indicate already, a little bit of the status quo and a little bit of the mythology of the story and how these people are and what is going on with them. And so just kind of plug as much stuff into that as possible.
Yeah, because one of the things that you do in your comics, which you brought to the show, which I still find to be kind of unique, is kids don't often get endangered in comics. The children are often like the objects of possible terror, but you do that a lot.
Yeah, well, you try to find those things that other people don't do. And so yeah, when I'm watching a show and I'm like, well, the kid's safe, and then they are safe, I'm like, oh, what a missed opportunity here, I tell you. So yeah.
No, but I just feel like there's something really primal about that. I mean, the idea of putting in danger the most innocent and the people with futures.
Well, I mean that's a thing, and there's a lot to that. But like, I consume a lot
That's
of
a thing.
Yeah, but I consume a lot of entertainment, and so I'm constantly, watching things, and you learn how stories are told, and you learn what's okay and what's not okay in mediums, and you learn like.
What do you mean what's not okay?
Well, like a certain dramatic show will go here, but it won't go here, and hurting a kid or killing a main character in some way, but not another way. I watch a lot of stuff, and I think that the audience gets to a point where they know when they sit down to watch a television show that there's a box that people are going to be operating in, and there's a line that won't be crossed. And figuring out ways to cross those lines is what excites me, and I feel like makes for better storytelling. So I'm always trying to, push the envelope and see if there's anything we can do that people aren't going to expect. And I don't know.
Well, that's a great point to sort of follow up on.
Man, we'll have Sydney eating a baby next season. It's going to be great. But
Well, before we spoil any more of the second season, let me ask you, Reg, is that one of the things that you like about the show, that in fact that it does kind of violate all these conventions of what we see?
Yes. A short answer, yes. But it's because of the three-dimensional characters that we all get to play. And it's not just about some terrible thing is going to happen to somebody. It's about... I like to sometimes make the analogy of what's happening to America now.
Whatever do you mean?
We look normal, but something's going on. There's something, and that's very much is alive in our show. Whereas we're not trying, I don't think, trying to make a statement about America.
But it's happening anyway.
It's happening anyway because.
I think America is emulating the show.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
Something like that, yeah.
oops.
Lots of kids killing roaches with their foreheads. Of course, it's happening everywhere now. But let me ask you that too, Wrenn, just for all you guys, though, if you like that fact that you kind of don't know what's going to... I mean, it really is a show that seems to be out to surprise itself as much as anything else, if that's one of the things you like about it.
Well, I really like not knowing what's coming in general. I feel like I don't like reading ahead. I don't like looking at the comics in advance.
What?
Rather, I look at them after.
Fine,
Afterwards, yeah.
After.
I'm the same way.
I don't like to be influenced by that stuff, but it's exciting to kind of see how the whole story unfolds. And I do feel like there are many ways in which our show tries to push the envelope in interesting ways. And I feel like that's always kind of a huge gift when you're an actor, to be able to be given kind of insane challenges and then, see what you can do to kind of rise and meet them. But I also feel like that stuff in our show is not gratuitous, which I really appreciate as well. Like I feel like the show is always, and the writing team, we're always trying to explore something that might have shock value, but that's not necessarily the reason why it's part of the storyline. And I really appreciate that as well, both for Megan's character as well as, I would say, kind of the whole world as a whole.
But just with Megan's character, I mean, which is is it the devil that's been around the family, or the actual criminal things that have happened to the poor woman?
Yeah, what can we actually talk about, Elvis? Can we
Whatever
talk
you
about the
want.
whole first season, though?
Yeah, no, of course, yeah, that's what we're here for, absolutely.
So,
Because
no
we're
spoilers.
dancing around.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's tantalize people a
Don't
little bit.
spoil too much, but go for it.
That means I don't know what I can talk about.
Well,
Talk
don't
about whatever you want.
I can talk about 9 and 10.
Don't talk about when you lose
no.
your leg.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, Megan does lose her leg.
But that robot leg is so great. I mean, who even
It
knew?
is. I really enjoy the person with the remote control that just operates it off to the side. So
The fight
doing this-
scene that Patrick filmed with the leg is actually amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty
It's
incredible.
like the Captain America and Winter Soldier, but a leg.
There's the title, in case you want to lose Outcast.
But a leg. Coming soon to Cinemax.
But, a leg.
Did you want to talk a little bit? I mean, because she goes through so much, and she's kind of like the sacrificed innocent. There's kind of this whole battle between her and her niece
between her and
and his daughter.
yeah, I mean, so. Oh,
No,
can I-
go ahead.
So Megan gets possessed in the 9th episode.
What?
Shh, don't tell anyone.
That aired already?
Yeah, I mean, it's been
Oh,
out
I
there.
know.
It's
I'm
been out there
kidding. Go
for a
ahead.
while. You can find it on the internet. I just didn't know who was watching this and whether or not we didn't want to spoil that. But the thing that was really interesting for me about that particular challenge was, I don't think that at that point we've really seen somebody kind of at the genesis of that process happening, which was fun for me because it was like, well, what does this mean? So as far as us doing something, I mean, I don't think I've actually ever seen anything like that, and not that I've watched all entertainment that's ever existed in the world, but it was fun to actually to investigate what that physicality was like and what that brain space is like.
Also, the
so
way
that was
also the
particularly
way she
interesting.
moves after she's been possessed. I mean.
Oh yeah. I had some crazy. I still love the moment when I went up to Chris Black and I was like, Megan is like a cassowary. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, those crazy enormous birds in Australia, and that's where that came from. Yeah, I know, right?
No, that actually
makes no sense at all.
No. But I just was kind of struck by the fact that character, we end up losing somebody, sort of, and somebody we've got this attachment
Right,
to. This
right.
thing you were talking about, we don't know who's at stake and who can be sacrificed, and that's the fun of it. So it gets to you too, Brent. Do you like the fact that the show is just really out to sort of surprise itself?
Yeah, I do. And I like the fact that it surprises me. I don't usually look forward. I've done other series, and I don't look that forward to reading scripts. But I mean, I'd rather just sort of like. Well, I wish I could just like sort of absorb it without having to read it. But this show, I
Yeah,
really
we could get somebody to read them to you if you want.
What? Could you actually? That would
Make that happen.
make a note.
Hey, Reg, can you start reading the scripts to Brent?
Yeah.
Yes,
And can you do all the characters?
Yeah, I'm like Bottom.
Ah, yes.
Wait, that didn't in Shakespeare.
Well,
Midsummer Night's Dream.
we are downtown, so it's okay.
Right.
You can say whatever you want down here.
Oh,
But anyway, my point was really that I look forward to reading these scripts. They're fun to read because they're cliffhangers. I mean, they're like, what's going to happen next? I can't even imagine. And even more importantly, what's going to happen to me? That's
bullshit.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
part. My
Exactly.
part. This script is really good this week.
wait. Is Megan still
I'm on
the show
page
this
10,
year?
and I'm already on 8 pages. This is awesome.
Yes. Megan has some good stuff this year. I'll have you know. Really good
You want to
stuff.
spoil that too? No.
No, I won't. Let's just say some
That
interesting.
leg comes
yeah,
back
the
to
leg.
play.
Is there any more Australian fowl we should be looking forward to the next season?
No, I
No
changed
kiwi
it
or
up.
anything?
No, I
Okay.
changed it up to a different species. Yeah, I went a different direction.
It's more finch work this year.
That's still a bird.
Just not Australian, but that's okay. It's another continent. But for you, is it?
All-American finch.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Robert, I always do this
Yes.
part in talking about you like you're not here, but you're here.
I can
always feel weird.
leave if you need
That
me
would
to.
be helpful.
No? Okay.
No, you're very good at taking things that we're familiar with, like you're talking about possessions or zombie apocalypse, and shifting it to a different perspective. So it's things that we're familiar with that send us down one path, one direction of expectations, and then everything flips. That sort of thing. Like when you're watching The Walking Dead, and then you're like, oh, who really is The Walking Dead? One of my favorites.
Indeed.
Who is it? And we have some very cool stuff that happens in this, where it's about possession, but it's also about these people and their beliefs and moral systems, belief systems, things like that, that I find very interesting.
No, I mean that's what it really is about. I mean, I guess the thing I'll connect Invincible and Walking Dead, and this is it's all about these extraordinary things that happen to ordinary people. I mean, so if you make it about character, then it's not just genre pieces and people being sacrificed for a higher body count, is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think when you tell those stories with, whether it's superheroes or zombies or demons, we never really encounter those kind of things in our everyday lives, and so they're alien things to us, and when we consume them in entertainment, they're something that we can't really relate to. And I think that having the characters in those stories be as grounded and real as possible, I think, gives you a better access point. So you can kind of see through the characters, like, oh, that's what it would be like to be in a small town that's plagued with demonic possession. Like, these people are terrified the way I would be terrified. And, just trying to keep that stuff as believable as possible, because when it gets down to it, we're dealing with some, fairly fantastical, really kind of weird stuff. And, you want to ground that stuff as much as possible to make it scarier.
I think also, too, the thing you do, and especially with Walking Dead and with Outcast, these things are visited on families. So it's destroying, and it really sort of we see how these family dynamics work.
I got to work through those family issues somehow, man. It all comes out in the writing.
Spoken like a true Southern boy.
I think what he's doing, it's a continuation of something that's ancient in us, and I think human beings really want it from the Greek myths. I mean, the stories encompassed gods and these fantastical things. And so in our modern world, what we're doing is that exact same thing, and the X-Men are really like the Argonauts, and we're really fighting with the underworld, the creatures from the underworld who have escaped. 80s. It's just a continuation of human beings sitting around a campfire trying to decide, like, the immenseness of the sky, have it mean something more than just fear.
No, that's interesting, because, I mean, for me, though, it really is this thing you're talking about, which is people sitting around. It's almost like this narrative is building up around them, and they're figuring out their parts in the narrative. But it's also, too, and because you're a family man, and everybody's connected to family. Even Brent, your character, has a family. And do you guys like that aspect of family being a part of the show?
Yeah, I mean, my family is different from their family.
Yeah.
and I'm not.
It's bigger.
It's bigger.
Bigger.
Yeah,
Boy.
but it does inform the character, is his relationship to where he's from and to his responsibility to
But
his
he,
family.
He loves his family. I mean,
Well, exactly.
whatever he is, he loves his family.
Well, exactly right. And even if we don't have a clear picture of who or what that family is, that's where he's coming from. He's coming from his respect for where he's from and who he is.
But then it's also a lot of different other kind of social systems. It's Sydney's family and Kyle's family, and no spoilers. There's another family, the people with kids, the people without kids. And it's how we all.
Even you end up getting kids for I mean,
Well,
sort of. I mean,
sort of.
I'm not trying to give too much away. But let me ask you this too, Patrick. I mean, is that one of the things you like about that this Kyle is a family man finally, and he's trying to sort of keep his family together in his way?
Yeah, I mean, one of the nicest things about Kyle that I at least appreciate is that he has this really strong need and desire to be around his family and to be a father to his daughter, to be a husband to his wife. Those are things that he really wants in his life, but throughout the first season, we see him go through this struggle of whether or not he believes he should be involved in their lives and that sort of thing. So that's a pretty difficult internal struggle for him to go through, and provides, I think, some nice base structure to explore all these different choices that he makes that are ultimately about getting back to that family. And I love it because at the beginning of the first season, we meet Kyle in a certain headspace and with a certain tone. And then once we start to get to see him around his family, particularly his daughter, we see this side of him that we haven't got to know yet, a side of him that has been basically torn apart before we get to meet him. So it's a cool aspect, and I'm really enjoying.
Wrenn, let me ask you, because it's a cursed family that you guys are in, isn't it?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that Megan has that perspective at the beginning. I think Megan very much has the perspective of, like, we're going to get everything back on track. I mean, that's kind of her mentality in general, which is, like, I can fix this, I can fix that, I can fix you, I can fix this over here.
And it's the way things are supposed to be.
Exactly. And I think for Megan also, her family's her anchor. Her husband, her daughter, the life she's very much created for herself, which is kind of in opposition to a lot of crazy stuff that happened for her in her childhood. And I think she's really rooted in that. And what's kind of remarkable about the first season is that she experiences all the ways in which that kind of gets twisted and kind of torn because this terrible thing that happened to her when she was younger kind of comes back to haunt her. So that's been really interesting, too, to see how she behaves differently around her family or what she chooses not to talk about or to hide. But I also think that it's kind of lovely that for Megan, Kyle is always the person she can't hide from and is always kind of like the person that's there. It's like for each of them, they're kind of each other's rock because that was forged when they were young.
But they can also see too what they both went through as kids. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's
I
so
think
Martha
they
Kane
both have like a very honest understanding of what those things are or were, and there's not a lot of. I don't think there's much judgment. There's just a lot of compassion and love between the two of them. But I think family. I think to each character in the show is very important. It's true for the Rev. It's true for Giles. It's true for Megan, Sydney, Kyle. I mean, everybody, I think, on the show. I think that's really true. And then I also think something else that, I don't know, I feel like each character goes through a bit of an identity crisis in the first season as well, which I think is really interesting. Everybody's, perception of themselves, I feel like it shifts in multiple ways. Megan especially, but I would say that's true for each character.
Yeah, I guess we're going to throw out to the audience now. If you guys have questions, raise your hand, and the mic will come to you. But I was going to ask, as we're going, go ahead. You can go to the question right now, right here.
Hi. So with The Walking Dead and Outcast, there have been the comics before the TV show, and I'm just wondering, what makes you, or how do you make the decision to say, okay, this happened in the comic, but I want to change this slightly for the TV show, and like, how does that affect everything?
There are a lot of different factors that go into that, and Chris Black and the writers in the writers' room, do a lot of work towards that. But there's also a big difference in the mediums. There's motion and sound, and a lot of things that you can do in television that don't necessarily work in comics.
Because there's a lot of silence in the show. There's a lot of stuff where there's nobody talking.
Yeah, and that kind of thing can make for a very long, very hard to get into comic, but you can have these moments. Just because to actually have a period of silence in the comic, you have to have a whole page that's silent, and that eats up page count. So there's a lot of things that I'll have like an idea for something, and I'll like abbreviate it somewhat in the comic. And then I'll call up Chris Black and like, hey, if you end up doing this scene, it can go here, here, and here. I just didn't have room for it. And so there's some things like that happen. And then, there's a lot of things with characters and a lot of different backstories and things that aren't in the comic, again, because a lot of times we just don't have room. And so that really, I don't know, I found Outcast to be a lot easier than Walking Dead just because there's so much that I feel is kind of unexplored in the comic that we're able to explore in the show, which I think is a lot of fun. I'd
also bet too, as you get actors and you see what they can do, you start to sort of expand the stuff for them, like Reg, you were saying to Reg.
Oh yeah.
Character.
Yeah, I mean, if we hadn't cast Reg, that'd be a much smaller character. But no, I mean, you get him on screen, and it's like, oh, I definitely want to see more of this guy, and we're able to have the room to do that, to be able to. Expand those stories and move him in different directions, just because the character in the comic, I just haven't had a lot of room to delve deep into Giles' story. And so there's a lot of, empty spaces there to fill.
Okay, so first of all, Reg, you're like a legend. Like it's.
He's not like, he is a legend.
You're. Did I say like? I'm sorry. You are a legend. The work that you did on The Wire, House of Cards is incredible.
Pootie Tang. Don't forget Pootie Tang.
I love
Dirty
that
D.
movie.
I'm Dirty D,
Yes,
damn it.
you're right. That kind of defined my childhood. But
Mine too. Sorry.
a question for you: do you ever receive any pushback from like the studio, like for things that might have happened in the comics? For example, what happens to Rick Grimes' hand, or like decency.
That actually
like
wasn't a studio pushback. That was something that we decided to do on the show. But it actually hasn't happened. I mean, working with our studio Fox and the network Cinemax, everybody's been really on board. I know that when we were developing the show, we didn't know exactly which outlet the show would land on, and so
you didn't know where it's going to be on cable or
right. I was developing it with Fox, but we didn't know what network we'd end up on.
Okay.
And we knew we had the international part of it like locked down, but we didn't have a domestic partner, as I think they say. And so it was like, we don't know what kind of content levels or restrictions we're going to have. So maybe make Joshua a little older. So that first episode, instead of being like 8 or 10 or whatever it ended up being, it was like 13, 14. Which is totally less cool. But then when Cinemax came on board, they were like, "Oh, we really like it, but it's just there. It needs to be edgier." And Fox was like, "Just make him 8 again," and we just changed that, and they were like, "Oh yeah, great, totally, yeah, this does it." And so that was really nice. It was an instance where the network was like, no, you can totally do this. And so it's been great, working with them. And both companies have been just really open to pushing those envelopes and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. To the point where sometimes I'm like, ooh, too far. I know the first time we screened the pilot in front of an audience, Fox had set up this screening for all their international buyers. And I'm sitting next to Patrick, who hadn't watched the show yet. Like, you were there when we filmed it, but you hadn't actually seen it all together. And, like, I think it's Joshua kicking his mother in the face and her screaming with the blood in her face. And this guy is cackling at the top of his lungs in this, And I'm like, that seems somewhat inappropriate, but like somebody got like sick and left because and there and I'd look around the room and everyone was like, you're beating up that kid. I mean, I don't want to spoil the first episode for anybody who hasn't seen it, but this strapping young man here just beats the snot out of like an 8-year-old boy. Which I had never seen on television. And I was like, people won't expect this. But at that screening, I was just watching it, and I was like, oh, someone should have edited us. But then afterwards, I came to my senses, and I was like, this is great.
Hi, guys. Thanks for being here tonight. My question is, I think, more for the cast, but Robert, if you can chime in on it, that'd be great. So once upon a time,
I choose not to, but go ahead.
Then you have the freedom to choose. So once upon a time, I worked on a film that dealt with demonic possession, and I was wondering, as actors, were there any times on set while you were shooting that like the material was just like really, really heavy, like it really brought you to a place that you weren't expecting to, or did you find yourself like taking the work home with you afterwards?
Every time we film an exorcism, I get blisters on the back of my throat for like a week afterwards.
Is that true?
No, but that would be freaky.
Well, it's on the internet now, so now it is true. Thank you very much.
There's a lot of dark subject matter, and the character that I play has, like a dark sort of tone and existence. And I think that, like, the way I look at character development and performing and bringing that stuff to set and then leaving it there is sort of a skill set in itself. I think that, if you try to get too deep into that stuff and it really becomes a part of you when you don't want it to, it can lead to some unhealthy stuff. But I think, we have a great crew.
Yeah, Brent.
Daniel Day-Lewis is still Lincoln. It's crazy.
I can't stop.
Yeah, exactly.
That was Kennedy.
Yeah.
I don't know how did Lincoln talk?
Yeah, very much like Kennedy.
I don't know.
Yeah. I actually had to do a scene on the show. Have you seen episode 8? No, you haven't seen it yet?
Episode
Do not
8.
spoil that. That's so
okay.
good.
Well, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I had to do some things in that scene that were unpleasant. And
some of them didn't make it into the cut.
some didn't make it to the cut.
Thankfully.
Thankfully, exactly.
It's stuff that didn't make it in.
Yeah.
This is pretty.
I mean, listen, it was way worse than what you saw.
It's
Yeah,
so much worse.
so much worse that 'cause some of the crew had to leave. They couldn't watch it. They were like, "This is just." But it involved me and
And that's when we were like, that's getting cut.
yeah, it involved me and a young boy and. Jeez. And
It's not that worse. It's not that bad, though.
Needless to say, I didn't take it home with me. But I will say this: we're actors, and this was our job. And I said to this young boy, "Look, we're going to do this scene. It's going to be really weird. It's very uncomfortable, but this is our job. Let's just do it. Let's not." It's not going to be unpleasant at all. We're going to have a good time. And we laughed all day long. His mother was there. She laughed all day long.
Really? You didn't want to call Child Protective Services when she's laughing at some of this stuff?
Well, she had read the script before and brought her.
No, but seriously, it was not. There was a distance there between what we were doing and who we were, and we were really clear. This is acting, and we have a scene to do, and that's what we did.
It takes a long time. I mean, the exorcisms take a long time. And so you have to, there's this weird kind of way that you get through the night because, of course, everything happens at night. But you have to get through the, night with your sanity intact. And so there's a lot of there's laughing, there's going, I need to be by myself. I'm going to go to my trailer for lunch, get away from me, just to be like calm down and realize you've got another 8 hours to shoot. So
I think the demonic stuff is actually when we laugh the most.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like I think the emotional stuff is much harder as far as it kind of wearing on you. But I think that the demonic stuff's
Yeah.
so technical. You know, like they're like, can you place your hand here? No, a little to the left. You know,
The,
there's so much
This
of that.
way.
Right. Yeah. Look
Yeah.
at this X on the camera. Yeah.
The initial episode where Joshua, there's this for people who haven't watched the show. There's this.
I've already ruined stuff.
That's fine.
Yeah, there's this effect that there's something special about Kyle Barnes, and these possessed people want to draw whatever essence it is out of him. So it's like this like soul suck. It's like the death kiss from Harry Potter. You know,
It's
what I'm saying?
nothing like the death kiss from Harry Potter.
I would say it's ripped off from the
You mean inspired by?
inspired by, or that was inspired by you.
Homage.
When Kyle dies in season 2, you're going to be like, oh my God, I never saw this coming.
But Gabriel and I had to get our faces like super close, and there's no special effects on the day, so we were just sitting there going, like this close to each other, and we could like barely got through each take. They'd cut, and we'd start laughing. It's like he was 10, and I'm emotionally 10, and so.
Well, with that, now let's thank these guys for being.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.